Well, good morning or good afternoon, whichever area that you're in today. It's good to see everybody. Um, yeah, I know that fortunately sometimes we are on at the same time other people are on, and that's okay too. It's just like that. There's only so many hours in a day, and anyway, so today we're going to talk about red flags, and I came across letter number 6 from Nasty Chad Daybell. All right. So let me turn this down over here. I was making sure my music isn't too loud because that's a constant problem. Because I'll be going along, all of a sudden, I don't know, somebody will be screaming at me, hey, your music's too loud, I can't even hear you talk. And I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. But anyway, here we go. So let's just talk about Chad Daybell for a minute. Now, he sent out letter number 6. I find this to be very disturbing and disgusting what is happening over here with Chad Daybell and his little letters that he's sending out. Okay, I don't think, okay, Jack, my little dog's staying here beside me. Okay, I'm going to go over here and just pull it off of X. Instead, I had saved it a different way, but I'm going to just pull it off of X. It's easier to read that way. Here we go. So let's start with, yes. We're going to go up here and start with, in case you have not heard this, garbage, because that's what it is. He's over here once again using excuses, manipulating people, typical sociopathic behavior, narcissistic behavior with this, oh, it's me, the same person you've always known. I'm innocent. I will prove I did none of this. I don't know why I'm in prison like this. This was God's plan. This was not man's plan. Let me open this water. Sorry, guys. I'm never prepared. You know that. I'm working on it, but anyway. So that is what these letters are all about. It's another way to suck you into his cult-like behavior to try to soften everything that happened, that it's not what you think it is. Extreme, just blah, 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 typical Chad Daybell. But what upsets me about the whole thing is the continued victim blaming that we see happening in these trashy letters that are being put out on X, that I wish there was some way we could stop it. I really do, because I find it very disgusting and disturbing. He's going on about people, oh, he loved them, or, he misses them too, etc. You helped take their lives. How dare you? How dare you? And I'm sure this has everything to do with Emma continuing the cult behavior, continuing with the, and that's another thing that certainly shocked me. When I saw her testify, and when I read these letters, etc., I'm seeing that not one child stood up for their mother. Why not? What in the world? How are you brainwashed to that point where you cannot even stand up for your mother? Still to this day, Emma is over here helping put this crap out without any thought about her mother and what happened to her mother. She's still trying to believe, still trying to act like she believes, oh, it's natural causes, and that when they exhumed her body, they made all this mess up. It wasn't real. What are you talking about? None of that was real, right? So let's just start with letter number 6. Chad Daybell, letters from Chad. No, I'm not subscribing to it. I just noticed that there was another letter put out, and I thought, well, we've got to read it because he's going to describe his second near-death experience, which every one of these near-death experiences, the way I see it, or in my opinion, not that mine matters, they're all fake, right? Because we know that it was talked about in these books that he was writing, that they were all fiction. Until one day when he's with Lori and that group, it's all, no, this is what's coming true. This is what's coming to pass. God has told me these things, right? So here we go. My second near-death experience happened in the summer of 1993. 8 years had passed since I had jumped off that cliff at Flaming Gorge Reservoir. I was now nearly 25 years old. Tammy and I had moved to Ogden the previous year when I was hired as a copy editor for the Standard Examiner newspaper, and we now had a 1-year-old son. Oh, okay. Ogden is about a 90-minute drive from Springville, so we felt we were on our own, but still close enough to visit our families regularly. I really enjoyed my new job. I'd been the city editor during my senior year for BYU's Daily Universe newspaper, but going to the Standard Examiner was a major step up. Okay. The company was a full-scale operation with a bustling newsroom and dozens of employees, and I was right on the front lines in producing the newspaper each day. This was an exciting time when computer typesetting programs were being introduced, but when I first started working there, we would still actually cut and pasted the newspaper together. I guess they were a little behind the times, not sure. On the copy desk, we would design the pages, edit the stories, write the headlines, and then send the articles to the production room. If an article ended up being too long for the page, I would be called to the production room to decide which part of the story to cut out. Well, this reminds me of everything else he's ever done. He's cutting out the parts of the stories that are too long, that he doesn't want to address, that also makes him appear to be guilty and appear to be exactly what he is, a cult leader. So he's cutting this out already. He's very experienced at that. Okay. Then, with an X-Acto knife, we would just literally cut the text to fit and paste it onto the pageboard. Just like you're doing right now, Chad. You're an expert at this. Good. Bravo. Wonderful. No wonder. There was a lot of stress as the daily deadline approached, with people running everywhere and shouting to each other as we tried to do 3 things at once. I would be editing a last-minute article on my computer, but listening for someone to shout, "Chad, get back here and cut this story," or "That headline isn't long enough, rewrite it." So the job was invigorating, and I was getting a hands-on crash course in writing, editing, and publishing. The 8-hour shifts went quickly because we rarely had time for a break. Since I had interest in sports, I became the main copy editor for the sports section. Okay. I thrived in the excitement each weekend as we scrambled to get in all the high school and college stories and scores before the deadline. On those nights, I usually designed each page and wrote every headline in the section. It was a high pressure at times, but rewarding when we put it together for a great section. I got along well with my colleagues, and I expected to steadily work for my way up the corporate ladder and remained with newspapers for several years. Tammy had made some good friends in Ogden, and we enjoyed exploring the northern Utah together. I was focused on my career and my young family. Then my parents invited us to join them on a vacation to San Diego, California. I spent my first 2 years of life there while my father was serving in the U.S. Navy, and that area has remained a special place for our family. One spot we like to visit was La Jolla Cove. I'm sure I did not pronounce that right. I probably need Yosi Crime to come over here and tell me how to pronounce that correctly. But anyway, where we'd play on the beach and look for seashells. When we arrived on this particular day, it was low tide and just jagged rocks outcropping had been exposed. I climbed out onto the outcropping looking for shells that might have gotten trapped among the rocks. Here we go. The ocean had been calm, but I suddenly looked up to see the towering wave just bearing down on me. I had no way to avoid it. For a moment, I considered trying to ride the wave to the beach, but I knew I would surely be sliced apart by the jagged rocks. Over the roar of the approaching wave, I heard an audible voice shout out in my ear, "Get down and cling to that rock." I grabbed hold of the nearby 2-foot-wide boulder just as the monstrous wave just crashed down on me. The force was incredible. It took all of my strength to not get ripped away by the water. Then my surrounding instantly just changed, and I found myself out of my body inside a tunnel of light. It wasn't a bright light. It wasn't a bright white light, but more like a yellow heat lamp. It felt like I was just wrapped in a warm blanket, and I felt extremely happy. I saw 2 men in robes standing about 10 feet above me in the tunnel. I instinctively knew that one was my grandpa, Keith Daybell, and the other was my great-great-great-grandpa, Finity Daybell. Okay? They had died before I was born, but it was like reuniting with old friends. I levitated up the tunnel to where they were, and the tunnel opened up into a room. They smiled at me, but they seemed to be in a hurry. Keith began speaking to me and gesturing with his hands. He mentioned my 5 children and the roles they would play in the future. It was a strange conversation since Tammy and I only had 1 child at the time. Boy, this just sounds like he had a little dream later on in life, not a near-death experience. Keith also explained that the task I needed to accomplish in my lifetime. As he talked, I saw snippets of future events on a set of screens in front of me. The rush of images was almost overwhelming. It felt like they were being downloaded into my mind. Keith asked me if I would be willing to fulfill this assignment that he had outlined, and I agreed to do so. Finity didn't speak because he was keeping an eye on my body, which was now tumbling among the rocks. I could also see my body, but I had lost all interest in it. I was too busy enjoying the family reunion. Then I saw Finity give a nod to Keith, who made a motion with his hand. I was suddenly back in my body, which had washed closer to the beach. I felt wrapped in a soft protective cushion as another wave propelled me over the rocks and onto the beach. I credit this cushion for helping me escape additional serious injuries. Then the pain hit me. I looked at my hands and I saw my fingertips were just shredded from being ripped away from the rock. The left side of my back had large bloody gashes, and I had a deep cut in my chin. My family helped me to the car and took me to the hospital to be examined. I didn't have any broken bones, but I got a lot of stitches. This brief adventure out of my body felt like an urgent business meeting where Grandpa Keith just poured information into me, while Finity allowed the meeting to go on just long enough before I would have drowned. It seemed like there should have been just an easier way, but I guess they seized the opportunity. I was pretty banged up, so Tammy and I decided to end our trip at that point and head home. On the drive back to Ogden, I told her about what had happened with Keith and Finity. She was very intrigued and started asking me many questions. As she did so, the snippet pertaining to each question would play in my mind. I told her about the 5 kids, and she was happy about that. She asked when would they be born, and I explained I hadn't been given any dates, but I had seen we would have 3 kids in Ogden before moving back to Springville. So we estimated we had at least a few more years living in Ogden. I'm sorry, it's a little bit funny, you gotta laugh. Even though he's not a funny person, he's horrible. Once we returned home, most of the snippets were taken from my mind, and even now I only have access to them on a need-to-know basis. Well, isn't that spectacular? Need-to-know basis. Right. So he only remembers this and brings it up when he needs you to know that he is a prophet. It is not false. That he was destined to be the head of this cult and to lead people and the 144,000 with his wife that he has known forever. Okay. Oh my God. Tammy and I wish we could talk more about it on the trip home and found out more, but we would have one answer soon enough. Little did we know during our trip that Tammy was already pregnant with our second child, and the third one would quickly follow. I had seen enough in the spirit world snippets to raise my curiosity about one future job option, but it seemed highly unlikely to happen anytime soon. During my sophomore and junior years at BYU, I had a part-time job at the Springfield Evergreen Cemetery. Okay, so he was called to be, I forgot what they called this, the person that dug the graves, okay? A sexton. He was called to be the sexton. All right. In his dream, he knew he had to have that job, all right? Oh my God. During the school year, I would attend classes in the morning and work during the afternoons, and then I would work full-time during the summer. Over time, all of my brothers also worked there. It became a family tradition in a way, so they were all sextons. Okay. The cemetery sexton was just Denny Pickering, and he supervised all the cemetery operations. These tasks included sprinkler repairs, lawn maintenance, digging and filling graves, and coordinating with mortuaries and headstone companies, and helping families purchase burial plots. I became Denny's assistant and took care of these matters when he went on vacation. In the summer, there were a 5-person crew to help maintain the cemetery. But in the winter, it was just the 2 of us. I shoveled a lot of snow. After 2 years after my Loyola Cove experience, and soon after our 3rd child was born, my brother called to tell me that Denny had announced his retirement. The city was looking for his replacement. My brother thought I might be interested in applying for the job, since I had knowledge and experience other candidates might not have. This would definitely be an unusual career change, but Tammy and I felt it was the right time to make a move. I interviewed for the position and was hired the next week. When things fell into place so quickly, we knew it was the right decision. So with our growing family, we moved back to Springville in 1995. Okay, now you've just heard the whole story about near-death experience number 2. Now let's go ahead and read his musical notes that he likes to add to every one of these. Get down, baby. My little Frenchie's over here just crawling up my legs. So sorry. Let's go. Let's read this. Okay, that's bookshelf. Let's go to musical instrument. Let's go to the musical one. Well, actually, we'll just go read the bookshelf right now because I think he does bookshelf and then music. I think that's the order that he puts these in, if I remember correctly. So bookshelf number 6. The late 1980s and through 1990s were a unique time when the truths about the spirit world were being revealed from seemingly every direction. The Berlin Wall came down, and the rapid changes in the Soviet Union brought feelings of hope and peace as we headed toward the new millennium. A spiritual awakening emerged across the world as these life-changing events unfolded. I guess it became very popular for everybody to talk about their near-death experience. Angels were a major topic of conversation on daily talk shows, and TV programs such as Touched by an Angel. It just was very popular. It's a TV show, okay? Just like we know that Chad and Lori many times referenced TV shows in their um, cult beliefs, right? A lot of it was from TV shows. Okay. Meanwhile, dozens of books about angels and visits from the other side filled the nation's bestseller list. Many of these books were written by LDS church members who either shared their own personal experiences or who compiled the experience of others. Here are some of the more notable spiritual books written by LDS authors during this time. Well, thank you for sharing, Chad. We all needed to know these things because we also want to know how do we also get an NDE to come back and talk about, all right? All right, let's go. Embraced by Light by Betty Eady, I Stand Amazed by Elaine Durham, and The Message by Lance Richardson. I Saw Heaven by Lawrence Tooley, the Beyond the Veil series by Lee Nelson, Coming from the Light by Sarah Hines, Echoes of Eternity by Arvin Gibson, and The Life Beyond by Brent L. Topp. After my second near-death experience, I devoured these books and many others like them. I felt I had discovered a group of people who could relate to what I'd been through. Each one of these books is excellent, covering heavenly topics from different angles, but with the same general theme of vast world beyond. But just of a vast world beyond this one. Okay. I later have the privilege of getting to know and work on books with Lee Nelson and Sarah Hines. They are among the best people I've associated with. Lee is good. She's just a good-hearted, down-to-earth cowboy, and Sarah is a sweet, kind, and thoughtful person. She's a true angel herself. Well, that's so sweet, Chad. That's so sweet. All right, now let's go find the other part. It's called Musical Notes, I believe it is. Here it is. All right, let me take these glasses. I couldn't find my other pair of glasses, so I just went and grabbed these, I noticed I left this stupid little sticker on there. It tells you how blind I really am. These are just free glasses. I cannot get my new glasses until after I have my cataract surgery, which, that's another whole story for another whole day. Musical notes. He likes to add musical notes to all of his letters by Chad, just because music has a big significant part of his life. Okay. Suddenly, after 3 years at the Standard Examiner, I was Springville Cemetery sexton at age 27. Although I'd been anticipating a transition back to my hometown after the birth of our third child, I was surprised at which job had opened up. I had been looking at jobs in Utah County just related to my communications or journalism degree. I had actually been offered a position at the Provo Daily Herald, the staff a couple of months earlier, but it didn't feel right and I turned it down. The cemetery job had been in the back of my mind, but I figured Jenny Pickering wasn't going to retire anytime soon. Jenny stayed at the job during my first 2 weeks to overlap a bit and answer any questions I might have. It was great to reconnect with him. My brothers and I had always regarded him with great respect, but also as a wise guru, because he would share various sayings and phrases about life that were equally puzzling and profound. He would often tell us, enjoy. Oh, Chad, we know you enjoyed. You just made it. You made it. Whatever you want to happen you just made it happen because you just chose people in your life to help you accomplish this. But sadly, it was all in the criminal way, right? Okay. This is it. No elaboration or explanation. If we ask enjoy what, he would simply repeat enjoy and walk away. I finally decided Denny meant for us to enjoy each moment and appreciate life. So I pass on that message to you. Enjoy. Oh, Chad, we're enjoying because let me tell you something. You're right where you need to be. You will not win an appeal. You will stay right where you are. And you will pay for what you've done. Absolutely, you will pay. After Denny's final 2 weeks, I was on my own. I tried not to feel overwhelmed at first. The Springville Evergreen Cemetery is very large with thousands of headstones. People sometimes think that the sexton job is easy, but as I described in the letter, there are many responsibilities tied to that position. But I quickly adapted and enjoyed the sunshine and fresh air after sitting at the desk and staring at a computer screen for 3 years. I think these little ads pop up, go away. The biggest change for me was being much more aware of the otherworldly nature of the profession. When I had worked at the cemetery during college, I hadn't had my Loyola Code near-death experience yet. Many spirit world interactions at the cemetery had been rare before, but now I could feel there were plenty of friends hanging out there in the cemetery. When I was alone in the cemetery building, I often sensed visitors from the great beyond joining me. Okay. So he could already see beyond the veil, and he was already having actions with people from beyond um, when he was at the cemetery building, which makes perfect sense, right? Okay. On bad weather days, I would work in my office to catch up on my record keeping, and invariably, I'd soon notice the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. It was as if someone was leaning over my shoulder and reading what I had written. I know these ghostly friends didn't mean any harm, and I would smile when I'd return from my lunch break to find my pen had been moved across the desk from where I'd left it. Sometimes I would arrive in the morning and see that my day planner was already turned to the correct day. That must have taken a lot of effort. I generally sensed 5 male spirits hanging around me. I understood that they had lived in Springville many years earlier and had been friends during their mortal lives. They considered themselves the guardians of the cemetery, and I appreciate their help. But there were days when I just had to say, guys, get out of here. I'm trying to get some work done, and they would oblige. Isn't that nice? You could actually direct the spirit to go away from you when you need to work. Nice. A few years ago, Rick Astley released the gospel album titled 50. Yes, the Together Forever singer from the 1980s, who is now well known for the Rickroll. Okay, it's just an internet phenomenon. This album is fun and joyful, especially the song Angels on My Side. Rick sings, I got angels, you got angels, everybody got angels on their side. Everything's going to be all right. Now, I don't remember that song myself, but that doesn't mean anything, right? A lot of things that you may have heard 1 or 2 times and really not ever really remember it, that's just normal. I dedicate this song to my cemetery friends from 30 years ago who watched over me, and also my current friends who I sense are helping me and protecting me now. Yes, Rick, everything's going to be all right. And then it puts some YouTube. Let me see something here. Let me see what this is. Let me turn it way down because I don't want to. Oh, it's Rick Astley's song, so I'm not going to turn that on. Okay, so there we go. That is letter number 6, complete with his bookshelf and his musical, whatever he calls it. What does he call it? Let's see. He calls it his, oh, geez. His musical notes. All right. Okay, so there you go. There is Chad Daybell's number 6, the expression of, well, it's not really an expression. This is his way of manipulating the people in his past to say, look, I'm the same person. Y'all just don't understand how I ended up here. But don't worry about it, because I'm going to get out. You'll see. And then he promises to bring you new information. And one of the things about these letters I've noticed is there's parts of these letters where he's actually talking about like, oh, someday you'll have all the facts. And then you'll know. You'll have all the facts and then you'll know. No, he won't. He's never going to tell us the damn truth. No, he's not. Don't even believe that. He will never tell the truth, just like Lori will never tell the truth. All right? That's not going to happen. Now, I found something that I didn't realize I had yesterday, and it was a lot of things from the Lori Daybell trials. I had did a FOIA and gotten the witness list and those kind of things, but I had never really downloaded them or used them because it's like, well, the trial's over, what's the point, right? So I didn't do that. But let me see if I can come over here while I'm talking to you guys and pull this back up. Hang on. Whoops, get my StreamYard. Right there. Let me get right there. I'm going to split the screen so I can pull this back up and we can talk about it. So it was kind of interesting. Let me see. It's right here. Okay, y'all bear with me for just a second. I hope it doesn't get crazy on me and disappear. Hope y'all don't disappear. My iCloud. Move it over here. Come on. Here it is. All right, now. My drive. Let me open this drive right here. It was just kind of all the things she just complained about over and over, made all these motions, etc. Right? Hang on a second, guys. Let me get myself back over here. Gotta make this small is the problem. Okay, so let's see, cancel that. Okay, I want to pull up. I hope I don't have to get the little stick out to pull this up because that would just be irritating as all get out. And it was here it is. I'm sorry, guys, not that one. Oh boy, it's right here. Okay, now, no, it's come over here now. Go over here. I want to get this. I don't want to make that big. I want to bring it over here, but Oh, come on, it's giving me hell. Here we go. It was very interesting. Okay, well, let me do it this other way. Let me see if I can do it this other way. I really should have just put it on my phone is what I should have done. But it's this, all of these, I know it's right here. Just a second. I'm going to pull this up while we talk for a minute. I also need to finish our book. I know I do, and I'm going to get to it, but hang on a minute. Let me move this over here. Okay, I know I can make this smaller and move it over here. Just a second. Come on, get smaller. Anyway, I need to finish our book as well, so we'll get to that too, but I want this to stop doing that. I guess I'm going to have to share my screen to pull this up, I guess. I don't know. Hang on a second. Let me try to get this over here because I wanted to read some of this to you because when she's in here complaining about all these different things from the, from the trial, about the upcoming trials and the information and how she was up. Oh, and the Nate Eaton thing, when she doesn't want, she was going to try to get Nate Eaton as a witness, and they were like, oh, no, you don't, right? That's not going to happen. Oh, Lord. Okay, so I'm coming to this new street. We're going to come over here at this new thing here. All right, now. All right, let me get back over here to me. There's me, and here's our new tab. So I'm going to pull this up, and let me get this over here. What the hell now? This is crazy. I don't know why this is got to be such a damn hassle, but it always is. Here it is. Wait a minute. Are you going to open up? No, it's not a photo. It's not a photo. It's a document. So let me get this document. It's over here from yesterday. It's Lori. Hang on a minute. Lori Fallows. Okay, hang on. Yep, there goes my dog's making noise. Of course. Come on, y'all. Stop it right now. Okay, let me go over here and get this from yesterday. Come on. It's so hot outside, and they're just running around crazy. So, oh, come on. Oh, just a second, guys. I know it sucks, but this is from yesterday, so I don't know. It's downloads right here. Come on now. Let me get over this here to these downloads, these PDFs. So, there's the protective ordinance, the warrants, the transcript for the jury. Just a second. Okay, here's something good. I don't know if y'all remember this or not. So let me bring this over here. And then I'm going to share the screen with this. Okay, I hope it pulls up correctly. Okay, share the screen with, and here we go. Ta-da! Here's this. Okay. Here I am. There I am. Okay, now you can see that right there. Now, it talks about, oh, I can't scroll it that way, can I? Well, let's see this. We'll move this over here so I can actually pull it up over here. Okay. There. Okay. Let me try to. I don't know if I can scroll it, but we'll try to see if we can get it to scroll. Sometimes it works right. Sometimes it doesn't. I don't know why. Oh, right there. I think that's how we're going to do it. A second. Let me scroll it just a second. I got to make sure I can scroll it down, so we can actually read it as we go here because there's a lot of information here. Oh, come on. Let me move this over here so my little mouse thing can get it right. Oh, Lord. So, okay. Now, come on. Let me see if it's going to move it. I don't think it's going to move it, which sucks. Come on. I can't make it big, I guess. Let me see. Come on. See how it's not letting me scroll it down? Damn it. Okay. Well, let me go to the next page. I'm not even sure if it'll let me go to the next page. Let's see. All right. Well, there's me. We'll just try to see what we can do about getting it to scroll down. And this is crazy. Let me go to this other screen and see if I can get it to scroll down. Okay. Here's the first page and the second page. Okay, so we're going to start right here. Get back over here. All right. Now, there I am. Now, I'll make this bigger. Here we go. Let's make this bigger. And we'll go like this. All right. So, it starts out with all the stuff at the top, which is normal. And then it goes, the state of Arizona, through the undersigned counsel, hereby moves this court to preclude the defendant from attempting to admit any statements made by Tylee Ryan relating to the shooting of Charles Vallow. Tylee Ryan was allegedly inside the residence prior to the shooting and later returned to 5531 South Four Peaks Drive in Chandler, Arizona with her mother, Lori Ann Vallow, also known as Lori Ann Daybell. The defendant was inside Charles Vallow's rental car with the defendant for approximately an hour after the shooting and before the police were able to interview her. Kylie Ryan and Lori Vallow Daybell drove away from 5531 South 4 Peaks Drive at 7:49 a.m. and returned to the house at 8:48 a.m. Now, if you remember in the trial, they showed you where she was claiming, well, I didn't have any shoes. I had to stop and get shoes. There were shoes in the car. Okay, so she was, of course, lying. Right. Oh, I see this is having a little bit of a lag. Well, there's nothing to do about that. So the defendant was inside. Okay, back to where I was. The Chandler Police Department just interacted with Tylee at the scene and during the time at the police station as they interviewed her at the Chandler Police Department. So rule number 801 in Arizona has something to do with hearsay. So hearsay means a statement that, number one, the declared does not make while testifying at the current trial or hearing, and number two, a party offers in evidence to prove the truth of the matter asserted in the statement. Any statement by Tylee Ryan above about the incidents or out of the court statements that, I got to move it up now, hang on a second. We got to scroll it down. Let me go over here. Okay. There it is. All right, let me come back over here. Now, make it big. All right, I know we got to go a lot of back and forth. Okay, any statements by Tylee Ryan about this incident are out-of-court statements that would be offered for the truth of the matter asserted. Any statements made by Tylee Ryan to the defendant, the Chandler Police Department, and any other person about the shooting of Charles Vallow on June 11th are hearsay and therefore inadmissible in trial. So this was Trina Kay's. This is what the motion that she filed, and it's absolutely correct. That's absolutely what it is. So let me go back and I'm going to show you what the answer was. I mean, we know that they did not let it come in, which it should not have come in, right? Because Tylee was not there to say it herself. And it's the same with anybody else that was there. When I went back and read through these documents that I had got from the court that I had never really discussed with y'all before, because I thought, well, the trial was over. What's the point? It was kind of shocking the things that she was saying she would do all these handwritten motions, etc. You would have thought that it was actually Letitia Stouch over here doing these handwritten motions, trying to get this, that, or the other, complaining about, the interviews that were released, complaining about everything you could imagine to try to get these things not brought into court, to try to say, oh, well, that should be illegal. How are you gonna bring them into the court now that they've been released? It's just all kinds of garbage, just terrible. Anyway, so that was enough about them. But that Chad and Lori and their whole, and I've talked about this before, 100%. That everybody ignored the red flags. Everybody, they were all over the place. If you go back and you listen to the testimony of Zulema, and she's talking about, the castings and how she knew that really she says, the castings were like, not really that they would die, just that the bad spirit would die, right? But come on, Zulema, you knew exactly what they were planning. Zulema should be arrested and charged as a co-conspirator because she did not go to the courts. She did not go to the police and tell them that these people were dangerous. Melanie Gibbs. Now, we know Melanie got her a little... I forgot what it's called. Anyway, she didn't have to testify, and they were never going to charge her because she was going to talk to the police about it. Melanie P. She should have been charged in her ex-husband's attempted murder, I think. And I still believe, I wish they would, but I don't think they're going to do anything about it. But, there's just a lot of things about this case. You think that everything that could be talked about has been talked about, but not really. Because there are so many... there was also information in these documents about her mental health diagnosis and her mental health. Was she fit to stand trial? These kind of things. And she tried everywhere in the world to get them to not say that she was not fit to trial. Fit for trial. It's unbelievable. Still to this day, when you listen to her gaslight people and you listen to her gaslight Colby, and then you go back and you listen to the phone calls with her sister and all these people, it is so blatant that she is mentally ill. She is mentally ill today. She exhibits every trait Now, I don't know if I don't know if they're saying she's, a psychopath with narcissistic traits or, with, I don't remember what her phenomenon, anyway, she's just got a lot of problems. I'm telling you. And see, here's one of the things about this that we know this to be a fact. She has to continue to say that she still believes this because that is the only way she can sleep at night. You got to think about this. If you knew that you were misled by what just turned into be a cult leader, and that you actually participated in making sure that your children and other people were taken out of your way so that you could take on this made-up job that this person gave you. If you woke up from that reality and realized that, oh my God, look what I've done and look where I'm at, how would you sleep at night? You couldn't. That's the problem with her. She cannot change. She has to stick with this. But if you listen to Chad over here in these letters, now, none of that ever happened that way. You know that. What are you talking about? He's not a cult leader. He's the same old person he was when y'all first met him. He's just a guy he started with 2, but now 4 near-death experiences. And I'm sure we're going to hear about every one of them as he, creates more letters for us, which is very exciting. I can't wait to hear what the new two more are, because now we've heard about the old ones. Yes, because in his books, remember, he only talked about 2 near-death experiences. So you got to wonder, has he had near-death experiences since he's been put in prison? Is that what we're going to hear about? Who knows? I'd like to know, and I'm sure we will know at some point, right? God. Now, here's something else we need to talk about. I've got to finish reading this book. Yesterday, I was going to pre-record it, and I had read a chapter and a half, chapter 23 and chapter 24. I'm just reading along, and my dog, he puts his foot up there on the table. He's going to grab a little milk bug that I had on the table, right? Well, I didn't notice it. He put his paw on my phone, and it stopped the recording, and I didn't notice it. So I'm reading along, and I just happened to look at my phone, and I said, oh my gosh, it's not even recording anymore. Oh, Lord. So I said to myself, there's the sign. That tells me I need to finish reading this live instead of pre-recording it. So I wanted to talk about the red flags over here. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start on chapter 23 to go ahead and finish up our book, so we can move on to another book. And this is the sociopath memoir, which is, from her perspective as how she grew up. So let's get back over here to chapter 23. So, ready? Here we go. Chapter 23 is called Transparency. All right, here we go. I might have to open the window. I might not have enough light, so let me go ahead and open that window right now. I just don't have enough light. I was trying to shut it because I didn't want my dogs to bark here, because they like to look out that window and just bark and carry on. People are walking down their road. What's wrong with you? You don't belong on his road. That's what Jack does. He can be so bad sometimes, but he's so funny sometimes. Okay, let's go. We're ready. All right. So, I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling until eventually the soft beams of sunlight illuminated the corners of the room. I braced myself, anticipating David's alarm clock. When it erupted, I shut my eyes and pretended to be asleep. When he got out of bed, just minutes passed like hours as he took his shower, got dressed, kissed me on the cheek, and headed for work. I waited until his car was clear of the driveway, and then just jumped up and threw on some clothes. I drove to Everly's house. Now, Everly is her client because, remember, she's a music producer with her dad's company. And she's going to quit being a producer because she's been going to school to get her psychology degree. So this is her last client, okay? But they became good friends. If you go back to some of the other chapters, they became great friends in the middle of all of this. Which she needed a great friend, right? Okay. So she pushed her, okay, so she says, asked him to work. So she waited, he got clear of the driveway. She jumped up, threw on some clothes, and drove to Everly's house. He pushed a cup of coffee into my hand as I stepped across the threshold. Thank you, I said. My voice was breaking from exhaustion. She led me into the living room. Logs were already cracking in the fireplace. She pulled me down next to her on the couch and rested an elbow on one of the cushions, her eyes full of concern. It's just us, she said. Ben's at the studio all day. So tell me, what the hell is going on? Now I'm going to give you trigger warnings because she does curse and stuff, but I just read it exactly how she's written it, okay, guys? So she goes, what the hell is going on? I took a deep breath and just started talking. I described the struggles I've been having with David and my frustrations with him. I told her about how the pressure had just returned. And she talks about something called stuck stress, which is this building of pressure that she feels where she just has to let the pressure out. And the way she'd been doing it, she called it her prescription, but it's not a real prescription. She just talks about having to go do something just bad to release this pressure. She's lived her whole life this way, but she's never been arrested for it. Okay, but she's stole cars, she's all kinds of good things, broken into houses. It's really, I'm surprised she was never caught. Anyway, so she describes what's been going on. I told her about how the pressure had returned and what I'd been studying in school about my own personality. And finally, I revealed the details of my complicated relationship with Max. Now, Max is not this person's real name, it's just the name that she used. Okay, so the situation with Jenny and the events of the previous night. Now, Jenny is the person that's blackmailing her over some compromising pictures that she says she has of her dad. But now, when you hear about these, when you hear what happens between Dad and Jenny, you're going to be shocked because I find it very disturbing how the dad treated her. But anyway, we'll just keep going because I only know this from yesterday when I was reading along, and then it wasn't recording anymore. Okay, here we go. She goes, and finally I revealed the details of my complicated relationship with Max, the situation with Jenny, and the events of the previous night. I re-listened as I confessed to every thought, impulse, and behavior. When I was done, she settled back into the couch. Jesus, Patrick, she says. I just don't understand what the fuck is happening. I laminated. I honestly feel like I'm just losing my mind. Well, one thing's for sure, everybody said. Jenny Crucy is a fucking cunt. I'm sorry, trigger warning, I'm sorry. You know, she says things and I just read it. I'm so sorry. Okay? The comment caught me off guard and I started to laugh. And then she hit me with, and you have feelings for Max. It sounded so odd to hear someone else refer to him as Max. A bright spatter of dishonesty on the otherwise pristine confessional canvas. His real name was the one detail I had admitted, so she never told her who Max really was. Well, yeah, I said with a deliberate shrug, he's my friend. Don't play dumb. All this time you're spending with him, the fact that you never told me about him, and even the way you described meeting him, you like him, she said. I'm not judging you, she added, but what you're describing, well, that's what attraction feels like. That's what love feels like. I know what love feels like, Everly, I just replied, a bit too sharply, but that's not what this is. Then what is it? Well, I don't know, I admitted. That's what I tried to tell you. I don't process certain emotions the same way as everyone else does. I rested my head against the couch. Even if I comprehend an emotion is occurring, it doesn't always land the same way with me. I might intellectually register it, but I don't internalize the feeling, and that's the problem. That's always been the problem, I shrugged. But in this case, it's the solution. I don't have to internalize a feeling to cut it off. I can shut down my emotions whenever I want. What do I care? Because that's not what you want, he answered patiently. You want to feel things. I know you try. She looked at me sympathetically, but she can't pick and choose. She flipped my hand and lifted it like a scale. When the basic feelings get stronger, she said, lifting my other hand, the complex ones do too. But my feelings for Max aren't complex. And I paused and then added, it's sort of like you and tennis. Everybody raised her eyes, dubiously. Okay. Boy. Her friend is very insightful because she's right. She does have feelings for Max, right? She just doesn't want to admit it. You love to play tennis, I explained, but your boyfriend doesn't. So you quit playing? No, you just play with someone else. Except this isn't fucking tennis, she snapped. Do me a favor, she said, grabbing my phone. Show me a picture of Max. No, I said. Remember, she doesn't want to say who he is. Max isn't his real name. This whole situation is sketchy at best, and you know it. Wow, I said, crossing my arms. Okay, so when people cross their arms, they're closing themselves off because they don't want to discuss whatever it is you're trying to ask them about. It's their way of saying no. All right. Okay. She goes, my entire life I've been told I should feel bad because I don't feel things. And now you're telling me I should feel bad because I do. And I just huffed. Fuck that noise. I'm not telling you how you should feel. Beverly explains, ignoring my attempted deflections. I'm telling you what you do feel. And that, my love, is probably why you're also now feeling the claustrophobic stress. Because you feel trapped by a feeling. I'm just tired, I admitted, and my shoulders were slumping. I love David more than anyone, more than I could ever love anyone, But you need to understand, I looked at Everly. At most, my capacity for love is a fraction of David's. But he expects me to match him all the time. And when I can't, he takes it personally, as if I intentionally choosing not to love him the same way he loves me. I stick my head, so I find myself pretending to have feelings I don't have, but actually do have, just not at the same level he wants. I sighed. It's just maddening. I bet that is maddening. I mean, I can't imagine this. None of us can imagine it because we're not sociopaths. I mean, we do have feelings. We're not able to just shut them on and off like she is, right? I mean, she's talked about her whole life that she lived in a world where she would just mimic other people's feelings because that's how she would normalize herself. That's when she would appear to be normal, when she knew all along she was not normal, okay? Then why don't you talk to him about it, she asked. Why can't you just tell him what you just told me? All relationships are hard, not the one I have with you. I interrupted, not the one I have with Max either. He doesn't care if I'm affectionate or emotional. He doesn't care, period. That's why we have fun. There's never any pressure. There's never any stress. He just gets it. I think you mean he just gets off on you. And then she countered. But whatever. You know that Max, whoever he is, isn't the answer. He's just a new prescription, remember, to her sex stress, right? And that's fine. You can get high on your new prescription. You can run away with your little distraction. You can do whatever you want for as long as you want. Just remember, your problems are still there when you're done. And she waved a finger at me. And not just your problem with David either. What's that supposed to mean? Who are you, Patrick? Everly asked. I know who you are with me. I know who you are with David. I know who you say you are with this other guy. But who are you when no one else is around? A log in the fireplace crackled and popped. I stared at the wood. The flames just devouring it hypnotized me. I thought again of Alice in Wonderland. Who are you? The Cheshire Cat liked to taunt. I don't know, I said. Oh, I think you do, she insisted. I think you know exactly who you are. The problem is that you're not allowing yourself to be that person, the whole person. I don't think you ever have. So how is David or anyone or ever supposed to accept you when you haven't fully accepted yourself? I think that's a good way to put it, right? I stared at the fire and Everly followed my gaze. Bottom line, she said, you have to stop living in the double life. You're miserable, and you're miserable because you're never being Patrick. You have to learn to just be you, all the time, with everyone. And then what, I asked. Everly smiled and just nudged me affectionately with her foot. What do you care? Oh, okay. Later that night, I sat across from David at the dining room table. By all accounts, it had been a lovely evening, and I'd gotten home in time to make dinner. And David, who recently finished a big project, was in an excellent mood. At least it was at first. Let me check something right quick, y'all, because sometimes that music just starts going crazy, and I don't know it's like that because I'm not listening to it on headphones, Here's something weird, and I wish I knew why. No, it's Stuart's back over here. All right, thank you. All right. I've decided to include my sociopathic diagnosis as my dissertation defense. I announced over dessert. He stopped mid-chew, and he had the audacity to look confused. Huh? Going forward, I want to be more transparent about the fact that I am a sociopath, I explained. It makes no sense to hide it, especially if I ever want to be an advocate for other people like me. I paused to let my excitement sink in. I think it would be a start of something really cool. He shook his head and swallowed hard. So now you want to tell everyone? See, he's always had a problem with how she just tells people this because in his mind, yes, he's okay with it, but he thinks that the rest of the world would not be okay with it, okay? Which tells me that he's kind of not being honest with her about how he really feels about it. I sighed. It was a rehash of the fight that we'd been having for years. He was uncomfortable with my desire to lean in to my personality type. Not only did he reject my decision to disclose my diagnosis in my dissertation, but now he refused to even discuss it. The conversation only lasted a few minutes before he got angry and stormed off to the bedroom. I gazed at the tapered candles that glowed from the center of the table. Bright orange flickers cast soothing dark shadows against the wall. Everly was right, I thought. I loved David, but I was done coasting with him. I wanted our relationship to work, to be a genuine partnership. It was time for me to be myself. and it felt good to feel free. I watched the candles for a few more seconds before reluctantly blowing them out. I cleared the table and went about cleaning up. I took my time loading the dishwasher, carefully wiped down the island and the countertops. Only then did I turn off the lights and make my way into the bedroom. Sounds to me like you're eating awful late. I mean, around here, I guess I'm a little bit old-fashioned, but like our dinner is done and the kitchen's cleaned up by 6 o'clock because my husband arrives home at 5. I've already done, I'm just a little housewife, I guess. And so dinner's already done and finished, and then it's all cleaned up by 6 o'clock, and we can just enjoy the rest of our evening. She goes, the door was closed. I opened it slowly and saw that David was already in bed. Honey, I said calmly, I love you. But what happened just now is precisely why I want to be more open about who I am. He turned his head, so he was looking up at the ceiling. What do you mean, he asked with a heavy sigh. You refuse to talk about the fact that I'm a sociopath. I can't even bring it up without you getting mad. And I get it, I said. You don't want me to be a sociopath because sociopaths have a reputation for being horrible. And you don't want to see those parts of me. He pushed himself against the pillows. I don't see those parts of you. He insisted. I mean, I've seen you do bad things, but I don't think you're bad, Patrick. Tell me you know that. Well, I do know that, I replied, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate hearing those things. I can't tell you how much your perception of me is something other than a bad girl has shaped my awareness of myself. You've changed my life. I smiled weakly, but not everybody has a person like you in their life, honey. Not everyone has a David, and I want to help other people who aren't as lucky as me. We thought about this. I hear you, he finally said, and I get it, of course. I think trying to help people is admirable. I really do, but how's that going to work if you're telling everyone that you're a sociopath, he asked. The second you say that, no one's going to hear anything else you have to say. Every data point will be scrutinized. Every story you tell will be questioned. Sociopaths aren't historically seen as reliable sources. Let alone doctors, he paused. They're just going to hate you. Who cares, I answered, and at the end of the day, the only thing I can do is tell the truth. How people choose to accept the truth is out of my control. Other sociopaths aren't getting to hate me. They're not going to hate me. They're going to see themselves finally. He was quiet for a few seconds. I don't know about this, honey, he eventually said, and I shook my head. That's the thing, I told him. You don't have to know. It doesn't matter whether you agree with me. It's my decision, David. I folded my hands in my lap, and I've made it. I could see the compassion draining from his face, even as the words were leaving my mouth. So how I feel doesn't matter? He said, just shaking his head. I frowned, just disappointed. We'd come so close. He pursed his lips. Why are we even together? He asked theoretically. You tell me, I said softly. And David's eyes widened as he nearly shouted, I don't know. It's not like we even see each other anymore. I'm working my ass off. And it's like for nothing. We can't even have one fucking dinner without fighting about the same shit. He exhaled forcefully. We can't have a normal problem, like a normal fucking couple. Normal? Now I was furious and just struggling not to scream. Where did you get that idea? Was it when you met me? When I was stealing maps and hiding in the basement? Or all the times on the phone when I was telling you I thought I might be a sociopath? I held out my hands in frightened curiosity. Maybe it was the goddamn keychain I found in the house across the street to let you know when I'm doing fucked up shit. I pointed my finger at David. No, I said sharply. You know exactly who I was when you got here. You knew I was a far cry from normal. I left out that bad word. She goes, you left out that, that I was normal. It's just that once you got me, you decided you didn't want me. That's not true, he pleaded. I just want the real you. I want it to be who I know you are on the inside. He shook his head sadly. I know she's in there. I know it, Patrice. I stared at the floor. Oh my God, I said, David. I'm not doing this with you anymore. I put my hand on his chest. For the last time, there's only one me. This is who I am. I can't keep suppressing it because you don't like it. I shook my head helplessly. I can't change my personality, David, but you can choose the way you react to me. And if you don't get it, or can't, or won't, then I don't know what to tell you. I'm done. I don't care anymore. That's so sad. You've made it pretty fucking clear, he grumbled. I don't know what to say. I did care about David. I cared about him more than I'd ever cared about anything or anyone. But if he didn't know that, if he still couldn't understand that, maybe you're right, he said. His tone was much quieter. Maybe we shouldn't do this anymore. I looked him in the eyes. He was still sad and angry. I slowly shook my head, confused. I never said that. He just scowled. You may as well have. But I didn't, I replied evenly. So if that's how you feel, if you think we shouldn't be together, then you need to say it. You need to own your feelings instead of projecting them on me. Fine, he said. That's the way I feel. I feel like it doesn't matter. I feel like you don't care. And then he looked me in the eyes, just curious. Am I wrong? It was a prompt. Just one last cue for me to intervene and resolve things like I always did. One last passive-aggressive demand for me to make him feel better and to tell him everything was going to be okay. That I would just change, that we could just work it out. But I didn't feel the slightest bit tempted to tell him this. So I just sat there. I felt good. It just felt good to feel impervious. David, apparently frustrated when I didn't respond, just blinked away his tears and fumed in silence. Oh, he's going to cry about it. That's pretty sad. He leaned over and snapped off his bedside light, plunging into the room to the darkness. With an audible exhale, he rolled aggressively onto his side, and then he yanked the comforter across his shoulder. All the while, I just stared blankly at the wall in front of me. After a few seconds, I got up. I changed my clothes, I brushed my teeth, and got into bed. I gazed at the ceiling for a deafening silence inside the house, just wrapping me in the embrace. I had a feeling that I should have been sad, except I wasn't. In fact, I was relaxed. It just felt good to feel nothing. Ooh, boy. So here's the next chapter. It's called Killer Queen. This is chapter 24. There's actually 25 chapters, and then there's another little chapter in here. It's really not a chapter of the book. It's actually I'll tell y'all what this is. It's kind of interesting though. It's the epilogue, and I want to read it. It's many pages, and it's about love. So I think it's about modern love. It's gonna be beautiful. So anyway, here we go. Killer Queen. Let's go. Chapter 24. Let me have a drink of water first. I need some water. It's a little warm over here in Texas today. It's not supposed to be, but it is. All right. Oh, hang on a second. Somebody's looking for me. Here we go. Okay, well that's okay. All right, here we go. This is my friend Lady Freedom. We talk to each other all the time. Just anyway, never mind about that. David moved out that weekend. He left her. He moved out. Oh, I hated watching him pack. I knew I should have been upset, and I was upset. I just couldn't connect to the feelings. It was like chewing something I couldn't taste, which only added to my frustration. Are you sure this is what you want? He asked after putting the last of his things into his car. No. He looked crushed. It reminded me of the first time we'd broken up when we were just teenagers. I love you, Patrick, he said. He put his hands on my hips and pressed his forehead up to mine. And for a second I thought I might cry, but I didn't. The sensation appeared and vanished before I could experience it, as it had countless times before. Eventually, David got into his car and drove away. Standing there, just watching him go, I knew the time had come. If anything was ever going to make me feel, watching David leave should do it. It's now or never, I thought, planting my feet, just willing myself to burst into tears. I stood in the driveway for 20 minutes before giving up. There was no emotion waiting in the wings for the right moment to surge. I felt that way. I felt the way I usually did. Ambivalent, I just turned around and just headed back to the house. I closed the door behind me and just welcomed the stillness of my now empty house. It was heavy, like a weighted blanket, and I was tired. I sat on the couch and just stared at the floor until my eyelids relaxed. I thought of a hidden image. She goes, I thought about the hidden image posters they used to have in the malls, the stereograms. God, those posters irritated me. No matter how hard I tried, I could never adjust my gaze to reveal the tiger or the rose. Time and again, I saw nothing but a meaningless mosaic of shapes. The reverse was happening now. As I stared at the patternless wooden planks, I felt detached from my thoughts. I allowed them to float as my internal and external climates aligned. Instead of being annoyed at my inability to see something hidden, I just accepted it, and there was nothing there to see, nothing at all. Who were you, Patrick? My disconnected mind just wandered. I still wasn't sure, but I was sure it was done looking to others for the answers. Whether it was the longing for life like-minded buddies or relationships with good people. I could use as tethers to a normal existence. Remember, she talks about mimicking what she perceived as to being normal so people would accept her, right? Just she was always hiding in her own body, hiding in her own feelings. Okay. So she goes, whether it was longing for that like-minded buddies or a relationship with good people, I could use as tethers to a normal existence or surrogates I could use for my own self-acceptance. I'd always naively assumed that my social path to enlightenment would be a journey I wouldn't make alone. And now that I was alone, I realized that it should have been obvious all along. I don't care. Okay, so she's going to start talking about these three little words. To us, those three little words that are important is the words, I love you. To her, the three little words are, I don't care. So remember that as we go on, okay? It's important. She goes, I don't care that there was no one else like me in my life. I didn't care that I was alone. While everyone else I spent their lives trying to avoid sociopaths, I'd always hoped to find them. While other kids in school were just playing sports, I was breaking into homes. While other girls were playing house and just dreaming about the day they'd hear those three little words, I traveled a different path. I too wanted to embrace those three little words. It's just that mine were slightly different. I don't care. It's just three little words. I was in the administration office at the school a month later, just reviewing the PhD requirements with my supervisor. I noticed a clinical requirement in the graduation paperwork a few days before and had called the office for details. Dr. Robert Hernandez, the head of my department, had explained that in addition to my coursework and the dissertation, I needed to log 500 hours as an intern to earn my PhD. In other words, I had to train as a therapist for 500 unpaid hours. I wasn't happy about it. Come on, Patrick, he just cajoled. Dr. Hernandez was an easygoing clinician with a dry sense of humor. He taught my psychoanalysis class. We'd always gotten along. Think of it as an exciting learning experience, except I don't want to learn. I have said crossing my arms, so once again she crosses her arms and closes herself off because she doesn't want to discuss this with you. When you see people cross their arms, they're giving you a hint right there that they don't want to discuss whatever it is that you're trying to talk to them about. It's just a little something to, talk about. Anyway, so she goes, except I don't want to learn as I was crossing my arms. I'd rather open a vein than listen to a bunch of Beverly Hills adjacents whine about their first world problems. No joke. I'll bleed out right here. The doctor struggled not to laugh. Then please go into the hallway first, he said, because there's nothing we can do about it. It's required. You can get the hours at any accredited practice you choose. But if I were you, I'd just go down the street. I stared at him blankly. The counseling center, he explained, as if I didn't understand. I know what down the street is, and I replied before switching tactics. I'm sorry, did you forget? I'm a diagnosed sociopath. I explained, you guys shouldn't be letting people like me work as a therapist. Not for normal people anyway. It's kind of funny, right? She does make me laugh a lot. I want to help sociopaths, I clarified, ideally from a distance. Look on the bright side. Half the battle in clinical training is helping trainees compartmentalize their own emotional attachments. And then he continued, clearly enjoying himself. But you don't have it. I'm glad you find that so entertaining, I told him, collecting my bag from beneath the chair. For the record, I take zero responsibility here. Whatever happens is on you. And I turned and headed for the door. Later that night, I called David just to rant. We'd been talking a lot since we broke up, more than we had in the last few years. Our physical separation, just jarring at first, had led to a deeper sort of connection. Strange as it was, I felt as though we were actually getting to know each other for the first time. His moving out, in a sense, had been just liberating for both of us. Because we were separated, it was hard for him to feel responsible for my actions. As a result, he was able to talk to me as the person I was, instead of the person he wanted me to be. And conversely, after years of hiding aspects of myself from him, I wanted to tell him things again. It was nice. It's psychological malpractice, I said, just pouring myself some bourbon. He knows I'm a sociopath, but he doesn't care. He's just going to stick me on unwitting victims. Let me repeat that, guys. Okay, there's nothing out there. I thought I saw a powerful. Okay. He goes, he's just going to stick me on unwitting victims. I think it's all good for you, David said, though anything is better than the fucking music business. Except that ideally, a therapist should care about the lives of their patients, don't you think? Oh, please. You're interested in other people's lives more than anyone I know, Captain Apathy, my ass. Oh, well, it's fun talking to you, I said. I mean it. Spending hours on the phone with David again was like making a new friend. I just started wondering if perhaps we'd made a mistake when he came to LA, moving in together so quickly. Overly, overly dependent on the bond we had forged as kids, we'd missed out on the opportunity to forge a new one as adults. I asked David if he agreed. You're probably right, he said. I wish we could just start over, just a blank slate, like I wish I could just meet another you in a bar. I smiled. Like for the first time? Yeah, he said. I swear. If I just saw you out sipping a martini and I heard him take a deep breath, I'd walk over and say, "Hi, my name's David, and I work in IT, and I'm a cancer." Right, and I'd say, "I'm Patrice. I work in the music business, and I'm a sociopath." He laughed. So I take it you haven't told Everly yet? And I said no, but the time had come. After nearly a year of playing weekly, okay, so she just had she was over at the Roxy, right, playing weekly concerts at the Roxy. Everly's residency was coming to an end. Though dejected, nobody had been surprised. Music had always been a hobby, for most of them, something they did training breaks from, that their actual careers. Like these people already have, they have really careers. Not Everly, this is her career, so she's not just a part-time musician. Okay, so she goes. She was the real deal, and what she needed was a real manager, someone who could showcase her talent and help her to do what she should have done from the start. Ditch the band and present herself as a solo artist. The time had come for me to admit I wasn't the someone. The truth was that I no longer wanted to be a manager, not for my best friend, not for anyone, and after years of straddling the fence, I decided to quit. Unfortunately, I hadn't figured out how to break the news to Everly. David was right. The music business was lucrative and sensational. It was not healthy. It was not a healthy environment for somebody like me. From boozy lunches to creative accounting, there was something lawless about the entertainment industry. Left unchecked, there was no telling where I might end up or what unhealthy prescriptions I might find. Psychology, on the other hand, was more meaningful. The science of sociopathy mattered not just to me, but to everyone like me. Grammatically speaking, it was net positive instead of net negative. The more time I spent at the counseling center, the more obvious this became. The Alice Center offered psychological services to people who either didn't have insurance or couldn't afford to pay out of pocket for what was often expensive one-to-one therapy. In many cases, these sessions were free. As a result, the patient population was extremely diverse, with both in demographics and psychological terms. We got everyone from impoverished veterans struggling with PTSD to affluent victims of domestic violence who didn't want to be seen going to therapy anywhere near that Beverly Hill address. Interns like me were just essentially thrown into the deep end of the pool in what was a crash course in the treatment for every issue imaginable. Just a few weeks into my residency, I started to see a pattern. Let me get for her. The newest intern, I had the lowest rank on the care assignment totem pole, which meant I often got the patients nobody else wanted. This included people labeled with excessive comorbidities. This is several overlapping symptoms that made diagnosis difficult. They were just the patients who didn't fit neatly into any diagnostic box. The formula at that counseling center was just straightforward: assess, diagnose, treat, and repeat. The patients whose symptoms didn't lend themselves to a clear and specific diagnosis just filtered down to me. Right off the bat, I started seeing personality traits I recognized. Although they were reluctant to speak candidly at first, many of them eventually admitted to feelings of emotional emptiness and just a drive to do bad things. They spoke about deviant behaviors and pointed inability to connect with guilt. These patients described acts of violence and difficulty with impulse control. They admitted to deceit for the They admitted to deceit for the sake of blending in. Now that's what she talked about her entire life. To fit in, she would just mirror those people, and it is deceitful, right? They recounted the story after story of attempts to quell their emotional numbness, though, with pain and destructive acts. They spoke of dark secrets and compulsive behaviors. Even though some confessed to multiple crimes, none had criminal records. Just like her, she'd done multiple crimes but no criminal record. Some were married with kids, most had college degrees, and were all living a lie. Just like her, she lived a lie her entire life. These patients exhibited many of the same traits from Quigley's checklist that I did. They struggled with remorse. They disconnected from their emotions. They found peace in chaos. They found pleasure in confrontation. Yet, in spite of their darkness, these patients described intense feelings of love and affection. They were able to grasp the concept of empathy and could express compassion. They could talk openly with me about their desire to understand themselves and to stop the cycle of their negative behavior. They demonstrated acts of kindness and a willingness to cooperate. They were friendly. They gave to the charities. They were conscientious, and they were self-aware, and they were terrified. Most of these patients were no stranger to the word sociopath. They too had seen themselves in the pop culture depictions of the term and were just scared of what they saw. They were afraid they were monsters. They were worried time was running out. Many of them had visited multiple therapists before they only leave feeling helpless and alone, just as I had done. They too were just struggling with harmful compulsions, and they weren't often becoming harder to control. What these people needed was someone who could empathize, a person who could listen without judgment. What they needed was help. What they needed was hope. What they needed was an advocate. What they got was me. Patrick, the receptionist, just buzzed at my office. Your 4 o'clock is canceled. I was sitting in my chair just staring at the ceiling. My 4 o'clock was Terry. She'd been one of my first clients to describe what she called forces of bad. Affluent and intelligent, she struggled with apathy and violent fantasies. She started coming to the counseling center when she'd noticed an uptick in her destructive behaviors. Her primary target, this is so funny, I just bust out laughing. Her primary target was the parking enforcement officers. That's funny. These public servants were the perfect outlets for her ears. Being ticketed for a minor infraction for what she was always admittedly guilty would send her into a cold rage. She'd spend hours obsessed with the meter maids, male or female, even stalking them on their rounds and following them home. After almost getting caught just hurling a brick at the cruiser's window at one of her adversaries, Terry decided she wanted to get help. She was assigned to me purely by chance. I looked at the clock and sighed. It was out of character for her to miss a session. I dialed her number. Why did you cancel? I asked when she answered. Oh, I overslept, she said, although she sounded wide awake. Sorry, after I got home from the gym, I just crashed out on the couch. So you're at home? She goes, yep. This is kind of funny. Oh, it's on my page right here. She goes, yep. Then send me a photo from the living room. This request was highly unorthodox. My job as a therapist was to observe and assess in sessions. Asking a patient to send me proof of their physical location was inappropriate, especially for an inexperienced therapist. Had my supervisor known, he would have been upset, but he didn't know, and I didn't care. Terry, I said. She didn't respond. Would you like to tell me where you really are? She says, no, she replied, but I'm leaving. Great, I said. We can talk while you drive. An hour later, I hung up and leaned back in the chair. Parking cops sleep well tonight. I thought contentedly. The late afternoon sun was casting long shadows around my office, and I sighed happily. Terry had been my last appointment, and I was glad to be done for the day. I wondered what would happen if I stayed here one night. I thought, the idea was wildly tempting. It's not exactly a suite of the ambassador. I thought maybe with a grin, but it could be interesting. My phone buzzed, and I saw a text from Max. Knock, knock, he said. He had been just back in L.A. for a few weeks, though he had hardly seemed like we'd spent any time apart. In fact, we'd been texting almost nonstop since he left. It was from a communications I perceived as simultaneously liberating and circumcised. I spent hours exchanging messages with him about everything from my attempts at psychotherapy to his various love interests. It allowed for a type of one-sided engagement I just preferred. I enjoyed the company of someone who didn't want to change me or marry me or think about the future or anything more complicated than the next chord of progressions. But since he'd come back to town, the dynamics had shifted. We'd been laughing out more, he'd been hanging out more often, and I didn't know how I felt about it. Prior to separating from David, I knew exactly where Max fit into my life, precisely how to dose my prescription. I'd had a boyfriend, and it wasn't Max, but now things were different. Our relationship was It was difficult to define. The line had become blurred. Perhaps they'd always been blurred. Once again, I couldn't tell. My office door just cracked open, and Max just stuck his head inside. Knock, knock, he said. Jesus, I exclaimed. The therapist's office were only accessible through multiple locked doors. How did you get back here? The chick in front just buzzed me through. He took a seat on the couch in front of me. I'm sure she did, I replied dryly. So what's up, he asked. Where are we going? We planned to meet for drinks after work, but I didn't really feel like drinking. I just wrinkled my nose at him. I don't know, I said. I'm not in the bar mood. My house band, he responded too quickly. It's perfect, actually. I have a track I want to play for you in the music room. A windowless cave, Max's music room, was an ad hoc studio featuring an impressive collection of musical instruments and memorabilia. It was impossible to step inside that music room and not instantly lose track of time. He assesses he frequently used it to his advantage. A hostage theater? I said with a smirk. It was how I described the often captive-like experiences of being forced to listen to new music. It always had been the least favorite part of being a manager. Fuck off, he replied, laughing. I swear to God, all you artists are the same. I described, it doesn't matter whether you sold one song or 10 million. When a musician wants to play you something, it's like being held at gunpoint. Luckily for me, though, I noted, I don't have to do that anymore. I'm no longer a manager, remember? Unlike David, Max vehemently disagreed with me on my decision to quit. He flashed a sneer. Not true, and he reminded me, isn't your friend's last show tomorrow night? I nodded reluctantly. Everything's final Roxy appearance would mark the official end of her tenure with the band. It was a bittersweet because even though I was ready to get out of the music business once and for all, I still wasn't sure how Everly was going to feel about it. Yeah, I replied. So then, technically, you're still in the music manager. Not that it matters, though. I am not interested in your professional opinion. He just grinned triumphantly and rose from the couch. So come on, he said. You can follow me. I looked out the window of my office. As I did, my eyes fell on the mountain that just framed the north side of Beverly Hills, and I had an idea. Actually, I said, you can follow me. I sat on the piano bench at the small cottage near Mulholland Drive, just looking at the sunset sky through the hole in the roof. A sign in the front yard declared that the property was now officially for sale. I heard footsteps from above and looked to see Max just bounding down that staircase. This place is wild, he said. Have you been upstairs? Max didn't wait for me to answer, but just took a seat uncomfortably close to me on the bench. He said, you better make sure that this thing is included in the price. See, he's always known that she wanted to buy this house, that she had talked about this before. I got up and began to wander the living room as he lifted the piano's lid and fiddled with the keys. Have you made an offer? I shook my head, not yet. Well, you better hurry, he replied, or I might beat you to it. He played for a few chords. Must be nice not having any material restrictions, I quipped. Must be nice not having any moral ones, he clapped back. I rolled my eyes and sank into the dilapidated love seat in the corner. You want a cozy house with a white picket fence now. Is that it? He just winked. I'd be willing to share. I nodded noncommittally, and I felt my lids grow heavy. The bluesy notes he was playing making me feel slightly inebriated. Don't go falling asleep on me, he called out. I can't help it, I murmured. He changed course and began just pounding out the energetic chorus of Freddie Mercury's Killer Queen song. I think that's why she named this chapter Killer Queen. Okay. I laughed. I loved that song. Not surprised. He continued just clinking away at the piano, softening the cadence that seemed almost exploratory as he bounced from key to key. Finally, he landed on a mid-tempo melody. After a few seconds of trying to place the notes, I cocked my head. This is new, I observed. What is it? Instead of answering, he started to sing. The melodic rhythm was the perfect contrast to the lyrics, which was prosaic and sharp. It was a love letter to a sociopath, to me. I waited for him to finish. What do you think? He asked after a beat. I shook my head slowly, doing little to hide my discomfort. It's different, I offered. It doesn't sound like you, like something you'd write. It's more, on the nose. He just smiled and swiveled sideways on the bench to face me. What can I say? He replied. Maybe I'm evolving. I fixed my gaze on the floorboards. The wood was cracked as a spider came out, in and around the space closest to the center. I watched as it disappeared for good beneath the darkness, and I sighed in admiration. I wish I was a spider, I thought. After an awkward silence, Mac got up and crossed to where I was sitting. He bent down and took my hand to lift me out of my seat. Pulling me towards him, he rested his palm against my wrist and pushed his cheek to mine. Outside, I could hear the wind start to whistle as we began to sway from side to side. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I rested my forehead against his shoulder in resignation, trying to savor a final few seconds of a friendship that, just deep down, I had always known was doomed. Why? I asked finally. Why did you play me that song? I already knew the answer. Because I love you, he said. There they were, those three little words. God, how much simpler my life would have been had they had been the same as mine. Because her three little words, or I don't care, right? I knew she goes, I knew what being with Max would be like. It would be fun and imaginative and reckless and extreme and unchecked and incapable. I'd never have to work a day in my life if I spent it with Max, literally or figuratively. I could disappear into the existence of my dark side preferred. Indeed, she was just tugging at me now, just practically salivating from the egocentric jugular Max had exposed. Do it, he urged. Leave him. Use him. I thought about it, how easy it would be to just take Max's three little words and use them to conceal my own. There was no trepidation in his voice when he said it, only confidence. He turned his face to mine, his lips just gazing my temple. I lifted my chin to look at him, just staring in his eyes. I was reminded once again of the great blue hole. And when he kissed me, I found myself just wanting to sing. The taste of Max, just an aching mix of salt and licorice and whiskey. It was just everything my shadow self had convinced me I always wanted. An alluring abyss. Freedom and pardons and spoils, oh my, for just a second. I felt unsteady from the combustible chemistry he just undeniably shared. Max lifted his hands to either side of my face. I squeezed my eyes tightly shut. God, I thought, why can't this be enough? Life with a guy like him was a path of least resistance. Max did not delight in virtue, but rejoiced in darkness. And there in the darkness, I knew I could hide the truth. The truth was that I did love Max, but not in the healthy way, not in the way that was good. With him, I could just stay that way. I would never be judged for being bad or encouraged to evolve, but I didn't want a relationship like that. What I wanted was a true partnership. Beautiful, cooperative, challenging, addictive. It's what I wanted with David. It's all I ever wanted, period. But if I couldn't have what I wanted with him, with the man I wanted, and then I placed my hand on his chest and shoved myself just gently away. No, I said. He was so confused at first. He looked at the side and just clenched his jaw. He was silent for several seconds. Why, he demanded. Because I don't want this. Bullshit, he barked. If you didn't want it, we wouldn't be here. Whoops, listen to him. He thinks he knows everything, doesn't he? He was angry for a moment. I could almost see my apathy expanding to envelope his house. My lack of emotion swallowing and negating his rage. What do you think? I snapped, just matching his temper. That you were just going to wipe me aside, tell me you love me, and we just live happily ever after? Well, maybe I did, he shouted. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that is I don't love you like that. I don't love anyone like that, remember? Yeah, I remember, and he shot back. It's my favorite thing about you. There it was. Max knew there it was. Max, I knew, wasn't in love with me. He was in love with the fact that he thought I couldn't love, not really, not normally. Max knew I'd never judge him or be jealous or cling. I wouldn't care if he was gone for months at a time. That made me safe to him. I was a promise he didn't have to keep. And to me, it was a hiding place I didn't have to leave. A dark and murky cave where time didn't pass and consequences didn't matter. As long as I had Max, I could stay in the shadows. I could just keep finding new prescriptions and stand still but pretend I was moving. Come on, I pleaded. Don't make me the bad guy for telling the truth. You know as well as I do this. I waved my arm vaguely around the space between us. Only works because we're friends. Friends, Max replied with a snort. That's cute. Don't be a dick, I said. We've always just been friends. Max went to the piano and slammed the lid closed, and then he turned to face me. Trips to abandoned houses, he said, and the voice thick with sarcasm. Late night visits to strangers' backyards and sociopathic confessionals. Tell me, he mocked, Is that the kind of stuff you do with friends? I nodded. It was, actually. He jabbed his finger at me and spat. Then it's no wonder you don't have any. And he glared at me for a moment. And then he spun on his heels and left. Uh-oh, Max is pretty upset, isn't he? Well, she told him no. I mean, he had to know that she was never going to love him. She'd already told him many times that she did not have those feelings. Not for anybody. He threw open the door and just marched to his car, nearly tripping on something in the grass. It was the wooden chair where the old man used to sit, keeping his wife company outside. So she remembers he drove by this house many, many times in the other chapters if you heard them. She's driven by this house many times, and there was this little old man, this little woman that used to live there. And he would always sit out in his chair and drink his coffee while she worked in the yard planting flowers, etc. She always had this desire to own this house. She just really enjoyed that house. It was some kind of memory that she just really relished in. So anyway, the coffee next to it was just sun-bleached and broken. I waited until he had driven away, and then I quickly closed the door. After a few seconds, I climbed the stairs and walked into the main bedroom. A four-poster bed was pushed up against the far wall, and I collapsed on it. Above the headboard was a window that looked out over the street. I stared through the muslin curtains for a while, watching the passerbys in secret, and then she fell asleep. So she falls asleep in this abandoned house. Ooh, chapter 25. Oh. So this chapter is called Warsaw. I woke up to my phone buzzing against the floorboards. I blinked several times to focus on the foreign walls surrounding me. For a moment, I reveled in having no idea where I was. Then I remembered everything. My phone buzzed again. I sighed and rolled over across the mattress. This decade-old spring just groaned in protest as I bent over the edge. I clicked, answered, without looking at the screen, and pressed the phone to my ear. What time is it, I asked. It's showtime, Everly says. Can you believe it? My last watched the show. I'm freaking out. What time do you think you'll come over? I know we usually do afternoons, but today you should come over earlier. And she paused. Like now? I put my hand over my eyes and just cursed the morning sun, which had already flooded the light into this white room. I can't, I said, annoyed at myself for sleeping so late. I have a shift at the counseling center, and then I'm driving to the show with Dad. Everly just moaned. Don't worry, I told her. I'll have plenty of time to get to the Roxy before things go nuts. Fine, but you're coming to Dorian's after, which is where the party's going to be afterward. She said, no excuses. I agreed and hung up. I rolled onto my stomach and looked out the window. A woman was walking a dog just down at the Benedict Canyon, and as I enjoyed knowing she couldn't see me. Alone in a stranger's bed, my existence unknown to the world outside, I felt more at home than I had in a while. I love being hidden, and with Max's parting words, on this page here, just ringing in my ears, I was just starting to think it was probably for the best. It is no wonder I don't have any friends, I said. He was right. The things I like to do, my reluctance to share, my aversion to affection, none of those things were relationship friendly, not in the traditional sense anyway. I loved people, I truly did. But the way I loved was different than most. And if I was being honest, not all that compatible. I didn't need to get love in order to give love. I never had. I preferred my affections to be anonymous, just independent. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared differently. I knew it better than anyone. The most palatable version of me was one seen from a distance. I lay there a bit longer, just soaking up the silence, contentedly cocooned in my apathy. Then I got up and just headed to the closet. No sense going all the way back home. But this is kind of, honey. Hey, Rob, good to see you. From what am I reading? This is it's called Sociopath. It's a book from a sociopath, and it's her story. It's her life story. It's the memoir of a sociopath, is what I'm reading. So, and this is, yeah, I've been reading a little bit at a time, because it's it's very well written, and I love reading. I wish she would write another book, but I don't think she's written another book. But I just read it when I have time to people, because I enjoy reading out loud to people. This way you have something to do when you're driving or whatever. If you don't want to listen to music, you can just go over and listen to somebody read a book, right? So anyway, let me get back where I was. This is kind of gross. Let me tell you something. She's in this old house that there's no running water, right? There's just no running water. She's fallen asleep in this old house after this guy leaves. And on somebody else's bed, okay, in this gross old house. It needs to be cleaned. It's just a Anyway, so she wakes up in this bed, and then she goes over to this closet and she finds some old clothes. Now, I want you to imagine what you're imagining is exactly what's fixing to happen. So here we go. It's kind of yuck. All right. She lays there a bit longer. Okay. Then I got up and just headed over to the closet. No sense in going all the way back home. I said to the empty house as I opened the door. A shoe rack hung inside that gently clattered as I swung it. Okay. The shoe rack gently clattered as it was swung. The clothes were mostly menswear, pushing hanger after hanger aside. I'd be resigned to myself to work slacks and an old button down. But then I spied this dress. It was a simple A-line with a drop waist and a lace collar. I smiled sadly as I ran my thumb across the neckline. Just imagine this old woman who used to live there. She must have just looked pretty in this, I thought. I turned my attention to the shoe rack, eyeing a perfect set of leather pumps. I frowned in dismay. My feet, I knew, were far too big, so I sat on a slightly oversized pair of men's Oxfords and a bulky sock. Can you imagine? No, I can't imagine. I took my time getting dressed. When I was done, I looked in the mirror. Standing there in this old dress with its floral pattern and vintage silhouette, I resembled a 1950s housewife more than I did a 21st century sociopath. Invisible? My favorite thing to be. But invisibility was a double-edged sword. It's one thing to wear a diagnosis I create, I thought, and smoothing the pleats of the dress, and something else to be assigned a costume. I've seen it happening even with those who knew about my diagnosis. Uneasy with the aspects of my personality they either couldn't or they did not want to see. People just tended to dress me up, usually with their own ideas of how sociopaths should feel or behave or react. This result was a kind of deception by proxy. People invented a version of me for themselves and then blamed me when their invention fell apart. It was unsettling and destabilizing. I walked slowly down the stairs. In the living room, the sunlight just pooled like a waterfall from the hole in the ceiling. My eyes fell on the piano and my thoughts just darkened. The truth was that I was better off alone, not because I disliked people or companionship, but because I found it nearly impossible to prevent myself from becoming who they thought I was. Unable to connect through traditional means, I learned long ago that my personality type just could function like a mirror. She always talks about this too, like she talks in all these chapters she's talked about, even from her very young age, that she would just mirror other people's emotions or other people's reactions so that they would see her as being normal, okay? So, anyway. Then she goes, unable to connect. Okay, then she goes, then she says, also, I knew that by using it to my advantage, I could offer people what they'd always wanted. What better place to hide than in plain sight? People were so enchanted by my new reflection of their interests that they hardly noticed what I sang off key, or laughed too loud, or cried too little, or stared without blinking. Superficial charm, I thought. It was the number one on Cleckley's list. And Cleckley's list is this list of traits that if people do these things, they are sociopaths. So that's where she's getting this from. Okay. And considered the primary trait of the classic sociopath, evidence of glib, insincere interpersonal styles. This was accurate. What nobody seemed to get, however, wasn't the offshoot of some voluntary deal with the devil. It was a coping mechanism born of necessity. I rarely used this charm as a trick. Like others in my cohort, I imagined. I used it to hide, to conceal my sociopathy, heard by the need to survive. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew others weren't. And what people fear, they eliminate. Or cultivate, I thought. My phone just buzzed again, and I braced myself for a message from Max. But when I looked at the screen, I saw a note from my father. Pick up at 9. So the father's going to pick her up at 9. The sight of this text just put me at ease. My father would know what to do. His endless patience and judgment-free style had always been a blessing. He had a unique ability to level with me and remain objective. He couldn't relate to per se, but he could reason. And that's what I needed, a person who could reason, free from passion, free from emotion, and free from agenda. I sat on the front porch and just uneventful day at the counseling center. Dad was on the way, but I was restless. I counted the bricks on the porch as the minutes ticked by, until, finally, headlights illuminated the front yard. Jumped up to meet him in the driveway. Sorry I'm late, he says. When I opened the car door, I nodded. I slid into the passenger seat and just rested my head against the window. Dad just eyed me curiously. Is everything okay? He barely backed out to the street before I was talking. As usual, nothing was off the table with him. I started explaining that I decided to quit the music industry. The words just tumbled out of my mouth as I confessed to the dangers that I saw in remaining in that line of work. I told him what I was learning at school and the counseling center, and my hope that, however unorthodox, I might actually be able to help people. I know it sounds crazy, Dad, but working there, it doesn't matter that I'm a sociopath. Hell, it might even be an advantage. I just tugged thoughtfully on my seatbelt. With my patients, there's no expectation for me to feel, relate, or connect, or even talk. I don't have to do anything but observe. A good analogy hit me. It's like the psychological equivalent of breaking and entering, except instead of wandering around the people's houses, I'm wandering around the people's minds. That is a good analogy. He said little but listened intently. When I finished, he took a deep breath. Okay, he began. Let's start with work. I understand your concerns, Patrick. I really do, he paused. But quitting your job is a big deal, and it's irresponsible. Okay, you got to understand something about her dad. And you're going to find this out as we keep reading. Her dad is very selfish, okay? And so it's really not about her. This is about him. Another person that manipulates and uses her because he knows he can, right? I disagreed. What's irresponsible to me is staying somewhere I know is unhealthy for me. I said, you need to understand. Having me in a business like this, just letting the fox guard the hen house. The temptations are endless, and my self-control is mediocre at best. I considered how to phrase my next revelation. Do you remember Jenny Cressy? Dad was silent, and I just relayed the story of her antics. I told him about the blackmail email and the phone call, just sparing no details. I confessed my trips back to her backyard, my urges of violence, and the reasoning behind my reluctance to turn her in. I know what I'm doing is reckless, and I concluded, exhaling with relief, which is why I've made up my mind to just go to the police. Now, this Jeannie person is the person that's blackmailing her, saying that if she doesn't give her $50,000, she's going to hurt her little sister. And this all stems to do with some kind of pictures that she has of her father that's compromised, right? So it's not about Patrick. It's about her father and her little sister. So I know what I've been doing is reckless, and I concluded. Anyway, then she goes, which is why I've made up my mind to go to the police. Dad momentarily appeared ill, but eventually he responded. Patrick, he said quietly. His voice was just straight. How long has this been going on? Oh, about a year. He shook his head trying to get his bearings. Then he wearily rubbed a hand across his eyes, like he used to do in San Francisco. Whenever he did it, I always sensed that there was something I was supposed to understand, but even now I never knew what it was. Dad, I said evenly, take a deep breath, it's okay. Okay, he yelled, looking at me like I was crazy. How can you say this when you've been dealing with this woman? His voice just trailed off. I shook my head in consolation. Sociopath, I laughed. That's not what I was going to say, Dad snapped. Well, why not? And then I asked accusatory, isn't that what sociopaths are? People who use others with no concept of consciousness or compassion? He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. That's not what you are, he said. Are you sure, I asked? Because after what I just told you, it sounds like it. I crossed my arms. Again, she doesn't want to talk about this. This is the problem. I don't know who I am anymore than you do. And he frowned and took his eyes off the road for just a moment. He looks at me. No, Patrick, he said. The voice leveled. This is not true. He shook his head and sadly, but with love. I see you, honey, he continued. And I see you are strong, smart, and loyal. But most of all, you are brave. I just shrugged. It's easy to be brave when you don't care about anything. You know, what else is easy, I imagine? And he argued. Doing wrong things all the time. Taking the path of least resistance. But that's not what you do. And he reached over to squeeze my hand. From where I stand, you've always taken the path of most resistance. And it can be a hard path, honey. I know, that's why I'm telling you. You're not alone. He shook his head. As long as I live, Patrick, you will never be invisible to me. He turned to look at me again. Between the two of us, I promise we will always figure it out. For just a moment, I knew what gratitude felt like. Who was I to have been blessed with such an ally? Who was I to have been blessed with anything? I love you, Dad, I said in my small voice. I love you too, he smiled as he squeezed my fingers again. Then he put his hand back on the steering wheel. That's why I'm going with you when you go to the police. I frowned and then just rejected that offer. That's unnecessary, I said. I don't think you should get involved at all. He looked at me just as Kip. You're not going to tell them about the stuff you did, are you? No, I said scoffingly. Why would I incriminate myself? Well, that's what I was thinking. I mean, it's obvious this woman is crazy, right? You're the victim here. He waited for a beat too long before adding, so maybe you're right. Maybe we just keep my name out of it. Now listen carefully what I'm thinking to tell you, because this is where it's horrific. This is her own father saying these things. My eyes were fixed on the dashboard. The texture of the leather just reminded me of this Rothko painting that I always liked. What do you mean? I heard myself asking him. Well, you're the only one she's blackmailing, Dad said. Mm-hmm. Here we go. Dad said, now sounding just concerned. Involving me is just going to complicate things. You know what I mean. No, I ventured more directly. He sighed. I could tell he was annoyed by my response, hoping I'd make the connection myself. I just think it's better to tell them you're the one she has the pictures of, he said. I mean, that makes more sense, right? Why she would try to blackmail you with pictures of me? The air in the car just felt thin. My heartbeat slowed as I gazed deeper into the folds of the letter. I don't know, I replied just cheerfully, but that's what she did. Right, he said. It's just toneless, overly casual. But if you say the photos she claimed to have are of you, then I'm out of it. It all stops with you, and I don't have to answer any of the bullshit questions. I sat still for a few seconds before replying. So you want me to lie for you? Sweetheart, he pressed. You said you weren't going to tell them the whole truth anyway. Dad looked at me and his expression was expectant. Obviously, it made you uncomfortable. I wouldn't ask you to do it, he shook. He took a breath. But I know things like things. But I know things like that just don't make you uncomfortable. Plus, you'd be helping me out. And he smiled and gave me a wink. But enough about that, he said, as we pulled it to a stop. It's showtime. I opened my mouth to respond, but my door abruptly opened. Welcome to the Rocks, a valet said. It took me a second to register what was happening. I shielded my eyes from the bulbs that just flickered at the marquee. I had no idea we'd arrived. I felt so disoriented and numb, and now desperate to get away from my father, who was oblivious to the audacity of his request. Yeah, exactly. The valet offered me his hand, and I got out of the car. Without looking back, I headed for the box office, just passing a line of people that just wrapped around the block. I nodded a quick hello to the doorman when he unhooked the velvet rope to let me in. Once inside, I was surrounded by people. I squinted in the darkness as I made my way through the lobby. I felt invisible, but not the way I preferred. I felt hazy. The ground beneath my feet was just unsteady. Heading for the bar, I scanned the crowd for a face I recognized, or even one that would simply register my existence, but I was alone. For a second, I considered just screaming, or shoving the girl in front of me so hard enough to make her head snap backward, or yanking the hairpin out of her top knot and just plunging it into the neck of the guy standing next to her. Anything to make it stop. The rising stress, so she's feeling that stuck stress right now. She never expected her father to basically use her like that, because that's what he's doing. Because he's using her sociopathy against her now. Well, it's okay because you don't care. That's what he's telling her. It's terrible, actually. Then I saw him. David, I shouted. He was standing at the bar. His elbow just popped elegantly against what I knew was his signature gin and tonic. David, I yelled again, just shrieking as I waved to him above the crowd. A crush of bodies knocked me off balance, and I was swept to the sideways. But now, before we locked eyes, he stepped forward and just grabbed my hand, allowing him to rescue me from the sway. I took a second to collect myself, and then I threw my arms around him. Sitting there just holding on for dear life, I said nothing. I just allowed myself to be held, just plucked from the current and temporary, just resurrected by David's existence. Hey, he said after a few seconds, are you okay? No, I whispered into his neck. No. But the noise from the crowd just drowned out my voice. David pulled away to look at me. Are you okay? He asked again. Gazing up at the neon lights from the bar just casting shadows across his face, it took all the strength in my soul not to confess, to fall into his arms and just beg him to save me, to tell him the truth, that I loved him, I needed him, I just ached for him, and not just because he was the only person who ever truly made me feel safe, and not just because being in his arms felt like home, but because he was home. David was that person David was the best person I'd ever known, the best person I would ever know. And who was I? I don't know, I said quickly, and there's was the problem. Okay. The reality was that there was no reality, not unless I chose to invent one. The truth was that I'd never told the truth, not the full truth. What was the point of starting now? Hey, he said again, his face full of concern. What do you mean? You don't know? He put his hand on my waist. What's wrong? I stared at him, my mouth just slightly agape as I worked out how to react. Like the tiles on the color wheel, just emotional options just sprung forward from my personal. In one version, I was sad and vulnerable, my face on his shoulders as I asked him weakly to take me home. In another, I was just charming and seductive, just drawing him into my nearby office to distract him with desire, infusing us both with a primal performance that I could physically enjoy, but feared I might never truly feel. General poverty and major effective she goes, general poverty and just major effective reactions, I thought. Number 10 on Fleckley's list, intended to describe the sociopath's inability to experience certain emotions. For the first time I realized the gravity of its precision. This is how I always chose feelings. I had no conscience pulling me toward any one type. They were just merely choices available to me, like the clothes stolen from the stranger's wardrobe, just hanging limp, lifeless, without a natural spark of their own. This was my experience of emotion, a colorful menu of effective reactions, curated, no doubt, from a lifetime of observation. David's brow furrowed, and it was clear. I was taking too long to decide. Even more clear was his level of denial. He'd fallen under the same spell as everyone else who knew me, projecting himself onto me instead of seeing me. David, after all, was a good person. He wanted me to be a good person, too. But what did I do? To good people? I weakened them. I stained them. I corrupted them. But I wasn't going to do that to him. No, not anymore. Forcing a weak smile, I selected a tile on the opposite side of David's spectrum, just leaning aggressively into his indifference. Nothing's wrong, I said abruptly, and my voice relaxed. I was trying to remember the merch count. I pointed to the merchandise counter, which conveniently just gleamed in the corner of the room. I always forget, I added casually. She's changing the subject there. She doesn't really want to tell him about what just happened. And she has a hard time relating, and she's always talked about that. David frowned. I could tell he wasn't convinced. So I threw in a more dishonest to smooth out the edges. Sorry if I seemed out of it. We just got here from Everly's, and I've been drinking all day. And I grinned and shook my head as if reacting to some inside joke. I was hurting him now, selecting words specifically to elicit the emotions I knew he most feared: exclusion, confusion, and irrelevance. He took a deep breath. I thought you worked at the counseling center on Thursdays. This message was crystal clear. He was telling me he loved me in his subtle way. He was letting me know that he had paid attention when I mentioned my schedule on the phone. He was trying to show me how much he was willing to try, even now, to accept me. But enough was enough, and I didn't care. Unresponsiveness is in general interpersonal relationships, I thought. The 12th item on Fleckley's list is meant to describe sociopaths' reluctance to respond in kind to warmth or truth or trust. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, no, I replied, just raining explorations. I decided to blow off work for the show. I lied effortlessly, and then I leveled another missile against his crumbling defenses. What are you doing here? Well, the blood drained from his face. I thought I might just crack, but he just soldered them on. We talked about this weeks ago, he said. Trying again. It's Everly's last show. I know it's a big deal, and I wanted to be here, and quietly for you. I nodded thoughtfully, and I just pouted and disappointed in myself. I don't remember that, I shrugged. But it's really sweet that you came. Now she's telling him another lie, because she does remember that conversation. She absolutely does. Get back in my chair the right way. Sorry. Making my back hurt sitting too long. Okay. Boy, oh boy. Okay. And she goes, she goes, I don't remember that, and I shrugged, but it's really sweet as you came. Then I watched as he struggled over what to do with my deceit, which was killing him far more slowly than I'd anticipated. I watched as he just floundered, but I did nothing to help. Grinning as broadly as I could, I opened my arms and stepped forward to embrace him. This overtly awkward display of public affection, I was certain it would do two things. It would certify my insincerity it would certify my insincerity as an authentic and embrace any sincerity the first embrace had. But as I felt his arms just wrapped tightly around my waist, I was confronted by a torrent of sadness. I rested my head on his shoulders and took several deep breaths. It felt so good to be in his arms, so honest, so safe. I love you, I said, just too quietly for him to hear. It was tranquility I was never able to sustain, but I could occasionally sense whenever he held me. The future with David was my version of phantom limb syndrome. At the same time, so real, unreal, that it was maddening. I wanted to stay there forever, suspended in that stillness, but I knew that I couldn't. David, like everyone else in the world, needed more than a stillness. He needed more than emotional poverty and mimicked its responses. He needed someone for whom love wasn't just inherent, but was all-encompassing, deeply rooted in the fabric of their being. Summoning all my strength, I released my grip of him, signaling I was ready to leave. But he kept squeezing, challenging my bluff with one final act of affection. He almost succeeded. For a moment, I imagined what it might mean to never let him go, to yield our dreams of a lifetime together, a lifetime of love and laughter, of music and books, and everything good in the universe. My resolve was fading. I wanted it so much when something caught my eye. It was a flash of movement from across the room, something my peripheral vision registered immediately, but delayed incorporating it into my reality until it was unavoidable. Max was there, staring at me. He stood lopsided, an arm just draped haphazardly around the shoulders of a skinny blonde I'd never seen before. From the way he was looking, I knew he'd been watching us. Jesus Christ, I hissed. I dropped my arms from David's neck and took a step backward. I'll be right back, I told him, and then I stormed across the room. Again, bad words, sorry. So sorry, guys. Hey, Elizabeth, so good to see you. There's look, Elizabeth, did you notice? You got a red. I made you a mod. I'm like, I got to give Elizabeth a red. She's always here. I just love seeing her come in. Okay. So here's Max bringing the skinny blonde over to this last concert. And it basically just to upset her, right? So here we go. Summoning all my strength. Okay, wait a minute. I got back to where I was. Jesus Christ, I hissed as I dropped my arms. And then she goes, I'll be right back. So then he goes, she walks over there. She goes, what the fuck are you doing here? I said, making no effort to disguise my rage. Max just smirked. I came to see the show, he drawled, just raising a beer bottle in toast to David's across the room. Although apparently, it's already started. Max just snickered and just leaned forward to the blonde's neck, twisting uncomfortably beneath his weight. He was clearly drunk. I mustered a thin smile for his date and just cocked my head toward the bar. Can you give me a sec? I asked. She nodded and took what seemed to be a graceful exit for the lobby bar. Oh no. She's so funny. Meanwhile, Max had just started a tirade. Okay, so Max is getting upset. He's going to start just carrying on. Oh, you didn't miss anything. It's okay. You can, Elizabeth, you can just always go back and just listen later, because what happened, here's something that happens all the time, and I'm used to it, and it's okay, Like, a lot of people will schedule their lives all at the same time. And because we're all in the same algorithm, because we all like the same people, we just end up having to do a lot of replay on other people's channels. And that's okay, too. I don't mind. I'm never upset. Don't worry about it. You can just go back and listen whenever you can, because I'm going to finish this book today. I started out talking about red flags and sociopaths because, actually, I'm going to tell you something. Chad Daybell has every red flag. I mean, we need to get on Koletsky's list and just see all the traits that he actually has, because I believe he is a damn sociopath, 100%. I know they don't use that term anymore, but that's exactly what I believe he and Lori are. When you get both of them together, well, that's just the perfect eruption, isn't it? Just a perfect storm right there. Those two together. Chad and Lori right there. Okay. So he goes. Oh, I gotta get back to where I was. Okay. All right. So she goes to the other bar. She goes, was I boring? He taunted. Was that it? You got tired of fucking around with me, so you're just back fucking around with Mr. Wonderful? He made a show of pointing at me with one hand and raising the other in a pretend high five to David. Disgusted, I turned around just in time to glimpse the back of David's head disappearing into the crowd. His cocktail just sat abandoned on the table. Fuck you, I hissed through the clenched teeth. Nah, he said with a smirk. I'm pretty sure that's off the table. It wasn't on the table, you bruised little bitch, and I just saw. Would you look at yourself? Jesus, I should have known you'd do something just like this. No, I shouldn't, he yelled, attracting far more attention than I knew he wanted. I don't know why I'm surprised, he said. You told me from the start you're a fucking sociopath, and he laughed. You don't love anyone. You don't even care about anyone, not even yourself. His attempts at provocation just were pathetic. As if he thought by baiting me, he could just force me to act like his version of a sociopath. His pedestrian, banal, stereotype version. Look on the bright side, I said, just eating his insults. At least you'll get some decent album material out of it. He rolled his eyes and said, don't flatter yourself. Ah, poor baby, I replied, in a playfully hideous sing-song. Flattery's your addiction, remember? Fuck you, he spat, just pointing his finger in my face. I fucking loved you. Spare me, I shoved his hand away. You knew exactly what you were getting. Uh-oh. He leaned close enough that I could just smell the scotch beneath the beer on his breath. No, you know, he raped. I'm sorry, that's not what he said. I'm sorry, that's not what he said. He rasped, his tone just oddly level. He slowly shook his head. You might suck at having emotions, he continued evenly, but you're an expert at using them. You take what you see, and you use it. Have I watched you? He pulled back so he could focus on my eyes. You fucking knew how I felt about you, he said. You knew where this was going, and you used me, like all sociopaths use people. But you weren't after cash or fame or power. He just leaned in close again. You were after feeling, and you fed on one life of a fucking vampire. I stood still and a strange sensation overwhelmed me. What was this? I couldn't place it. It was something from far away, an unexpected scent recalling some long-forgotten memory. I began a frantic spin through my emotional color wheel, desperate to find the correlating title. I rarely discovered a perfect match, but it could usually land on something close enough to hide what I was missing. I'd done it so many times. Why couldn't I find one now? And then suddenly I realized. I stared at Max. At the understanding of remorse just crashed into my consciousness. I'm sorry, I managed to stammer. Max is right. I was culpable. I hadn't played the role I'd been assigned. I played the one that was most convenient for me, just like I'd done all my life. I'm sorry, I said again. I meant it. He just stared back at me. After a few seconds, he looked away. He raised the bottle to his lips and drained the contents, and then turned back to face me. Nah, he said quietly, looking me in the eye. But you can fake it pretty good. Oh my gosh. He walked away, just leaving me alone to appreciate the irony of his final verb. Somehow, amid the swirling lights and the crowd, I managed to collect myself. I made a beeline for the backstage door, just cutting directly through the crowd and brushing past the people slightly harder than necessary. I climbed the stairs to Everly's dressing room. She shot me an impatient look as I collapsed on the couch next to her. Next to her makeup table. Man, she says, looking me up and down, what happened to you? I held up my hands. I seriously cannot even begin to describe what just happened. I told her, just shaking my head. Well, I'd love to hear it all about it, she began, with benign curiosity, except I'd have to go play a rock show. And she bounced from her seat and beamed at me. Wanna watch? With a deadpan expression, I nodded toward an alcove in the hallway that overlooked the stage. Can I do it from up here? Everybody just laughed. Of course. I like having you up here anyway. You're like my guardian angel. I rose laboriously from the couch. I'm sorry, I said. I don't mean to be a buzzkill on your big night. Don't be ridiculous. I'm ready to get it over with, really. And then she smiled. The sooner I get done, the sooner we can celebrate. I accepted a compulsory hug as Everly prepared to leave. That's when I caught my reflection in the vanity's mirror. Ugh, I said, recalling that image. I looked like I'd been through an exorcism. I shook my head and I stepped closer to the mirror. Seriously, I feel like I should just get baptized or something. She just makes me laugh. I cannot help it. Sorry, guys. Everly's face just appeared to go over my shoulder, and she cocked her head and grinned. What a delightful idea. Dorian's hillside pool just floated still above the Hollywood hills. The city just laid out like a blanket of integral stars beyond the perimeter of infinity decks. I took a deep breath and just dove in, slicing through the surface of the water before finally coming to a rest at the bottom of the pool. God, how I wanted to just stay there. I just counted it as high as I could, and then just broke the surface swimming to Everly, who was just sitting on the edge and attached to the jacuzzi. She looked sad. I can't believe you, she says. I gave her a chagrined pout. It was nearly 3 in the morning. Everly, I had driven up to her bandman's house to celebrate the end of this presidency. The atmosphere had been just buoyant at first. Flying high on her performance bus, Everly and her band just were celebratory and excellent. Sorry. And I was happy to coast off the wake of their emotions. But as their adrenaline began to settle, so did my mood. Shortly after that, we jumped into the pool for a moonlight swim. I caught myself just drifting back to a familiar state of apathy. So I used the opportunity to rip off the Band-Aid and confess to Everly that I was going to quit. I knew you'd be bummed, I said, just looking at my friend. But I just can't do it anymore. I just paused and then added, I understand if you don't want to be friends. Everly looked at me and said, that's crazy. What the fuck, Patrick? You think I would just want to be friends anymore? But she just nudged with me in her foot again. Be honest, she told me. Don't you feel the way I feel about you? Don't you know deep down that more than anything else, you're my best friend and I love you? It's not that I don't feel it, I told her. It's that I don't trust it. You don't understand. It's not just my interpretation of love. It's disjointed. It's other people's too, and I shook my head. People have never loved me. They see me as the dark, recklessness, emotional freedom, and they're attracted to it. They want it for themselves, but they take it. They use it for it. They use me for it. Steal my ego strength, ride my wicked coattails, and I use them right back. I tilted my head, but then after a while, one of two things always happens. Either I get annoyed and cut off the supply, or their guilt kicks in and I become the scapegoat. I just scowled as I felt subtle indignation just churning at the base of my throat. I stared defiantly at her, and you know what, I'm fucking over it. Over what, she asked. I mean, I'm done being invisible. And I just continued, my irate just continuing. It just continued to rise. Seriously, what should I be, the one hiding behind some fucking mask or of insanity, or I'm not the insane one. I pointed to the city below. Those people out there, those are the insane ones, the ones who deny their darkness, the ones acting like sociopathy is some kind of disgusting disease that couldn't relate to it. The ones talking shit about the word as if they don't. Oh my gosh, she's so funny. The ones talking shit about the word as if not the name of the some standoffish girl in school that they're all secretly trying to fuck or intimidate. I looked back at Everly and just sneered. I may be a sociopath, but at least I can accept it. And those people out there, and I pointed once again toward the skyline, they have an opinion about it, just like they don't get to have an opinion about my depression, or anxiety, or PTSD. You know why? Because I'm not fucking Starch, which is some person, I'm not sure who that is. Okay, I'm not here to be a projection for their basic bullshit. I'm a self-object of whatever crazy interpretation of love they've decided is the only one. But they're not all crazy, Patrick, Everly insisted. Believe it or not, there are people in the world who love you. People like me, people like David. I lowered my eyes and just contemplated this undeniable fact, momentarily distracted by the twinkling reflection of the moon on the water's surface. I know, I admitted, and in my heart, deep down, I do know you love me. And I know David does too. I shrugged helplessly, but he doesn't accept me. You said Max accepted you, though. Everly pointed out, and that didn't work out because he only accepted my darkness. I replied. I held out my hands. It's like David was too far left and Max was too far right. And I paused and said, I need to find the middle. Everly looked so confused. And what's that? Well, I fell silent and the weight of my statement settled. I am a sociopath, and I continued. I sit right in the middle of the spectrum. My whole life, I've been using non-sociopathic as compasses, like other people's compasses. I shook my head. First, I wanted to be good for my mom, and then I wanted to be good for David. But over and over, the strategy kept failing. The strategy just kept falling and failing. I took a slow inhale And then the reality is that I need to, because I need to want to be good for myself. I need to want to make healthy choices because I see the benefit in making it, not because someone clear is pushing me to. I turned my back to Everly and just rested my head against the edge of the pool. I stared at the giant concrete slab that framed the outside of the house and thought again about Rothko and his expressions of colorful fields. It's just like you said. I'm one person with David, a different person with you, and invisible just about to everyone else. This has to stop. I need to accept who I am all the time. I need to be who I am all the time. That's the only way I'll ever be able to stabilize my life. I paused and then added, that's the only way I'll ever be able to share my life. I looked down again at the water and just realized it was going to be hard to completely surrender invisibility. Ultraviolet aspect of my personality had, in so many ways, informed my existence. It had granted me the access to people and places and adventures that most wouldn't give anything to experience. A kaleidoscope of memories just flashed through my mind. The texture of bricks in the underground tunnel, the view from the balcony of the abandoned hotel. I smiled and recalled the time I put my hand through Samson's fur. His head was in my lap as we enjoyed a stolen afternoon. After that night, I felt the reverb from or the nights that I felt the reverb from Miles Davis's trumpet blaring from the borrowed speakers and bouncing off the rocks of the Laurel Canyons as I sped through the hills. I closed my eyes and just begged myself to be grateful for the fact that I was never bothered by the expansive stretch of solitude or feel the stranger's dress against my skin. To be sure, it was extraordinary existence, unorthodox but extraordinary. So, when do you think you'll start? Everybody asked, playfully interpreting my reverie. Well, tomorrow, I said, and then I just felt it out Janet's addiction. She goes, then I just felt it out Jane's addiction. Gonna kick tomorrow? Everybody just laughed. Well, I've got news for you, sweetheart. She said, it's already tomorrow. I leaned defiantly over the side of the pool and flashed a mischievous grin. Well, I guess I better get started. And then everybody laughed and just pushed me backward until I fell beneath the surface. I was already underwater before I remembered I'd forgotten to breathe. A feeling I realized that had long become my baseline. The water just rushed over my face and into my eyes, obscuring my panoramic view of the city. Beneath the surface, the artificial landscape just flashed once more against my eyelids. Its just edges sparked one last time and then faded slowly into the aquatic darkness until it was nothing, just a memory. Well, that's the end of that chapter, but let's go ahead and let's see what time it is. Oh, we've been on here 2 hours. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop right there, and we'll just read the epilogue tomorrow. When I come back with, I'm going to start back tomorrow on, I just love this book. I really do. I'm going to start back tomorrow on Aubrey Trail, and we'll finish it, and we'll just read the epilogue to this book. She's a wonderful book right there. And we'll get back on Aubrey Trail and his brief and all the information we got from that, because it's very interesting, because he too is a diagnosed sociopath. So it's very interesting when you start reading his brief. So anyway, you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for coming in. I hope you enjoy it. I know sometimes I struggle a little bit reading this because I have, my eyesight is not really great. But anyway, I still enjoy doing it. So you all have a wonderful afternoon. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, Elizabeth. I always look forward to seeing you. Anyway, bye, guys. Have a good afternoon. What's left of it anyway. I'm going to. Bye.